Charles Whitmore's mansion stood majestically on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling estate that whispered tales of wealth and success. Its grand facade, adorned with intricate stonework and lush landscaping, was a testament to Charles's ambition. Yet, behind the high walls and manicured gardens lay a world filled with complexities that few outsiders could comprehend. Inside, the air was rich with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. The walls were adorned with an eclectic collection of art, pieces acquired from around the globe, each telling a story of its own. Charles had always believed in the power of art to connect people, to provoke thought and evoke emotion. He often hosted charity galas in this very space, transforming his home into a vibrant hub of culture and philanthropy. Laughter would echo through the halls as guests mingled, their glasses clinking in celebration of causes that mattered deeply to Charles. Yet, despite the laughter and the glamour, there was an undercurrent of tension that ran through the mansion. Charles's success had come at a price. Long hours spent away from home, decisions made in boardrooms that often overshadowed family dinners. Margaret, his estranged wife, had once reveled in the life of luxury, but now felt like a ghost haunting her own home. She wandered through the grand living room, her fingers brushing against the spines of books on the shelves, a silent reminder of conversations left unfinished and dreams deferred. Margaret had always been more than just Charles's wife. She was his confidant and muse in their early years together. They shared passionate debates about art and literature late into the night. But as Charles's empire grew, so did the distance between them. Now, as she stood in their home filled with memories, she felt a pang of regret for what had been lost. The vibrant woman who once danced through life now felt like a shadow, her laughter replaced by silence. Ethan Whitmore, their son, was a striking figure with an air of determination about him. He had inherited his father's sharp intellect, but struggled under the weight of expectations that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. Standing in front of a large portrait of Charles hanging in the foyer, Ethan felt a mix of admiration and resentment. He had always sought his father's approval, but felt it slipping further away as he pursued his own path in business. Why couldn't he see what I could do? He often wondered. The pressure to succeed loomed over him like a dark cloud. Lila Whitmore, their daughter, was an artist at heart, a free spirit who found solace in her paintbrushes and canvases. Unlike her brother, she had never been drawn to the world of finance or corporate success. Instead, she sought beauty in imperfection and authenticity. Standing in her father's gallery room, filled with exquisite art pieces, Lila felt both inspired and suffocated. She longed for her father's recognition, but feared that her artistic pursuits would never measure up to his lofty ideals. "Why can't he just understand me?" she lamented silently as she traced her fingers over one of her own paintings hidden beneath a cloth. David Chun, Charles's longtime friend and business partner, often found himself caught between loyalty to Charles and concern for his family. He admired Charles for his vision, but also recognized the toll it took on those closest to him. David had seen firsthand how ambition could consume a person, how it could create barriers even within families that were meant to be unbreakable. As he entered the mansion for yet another gala event, he sensed an unease lingering in the air, a feeling that something was about to change. Then there was Sophie Reynolds, a distant relative whom Charles had taken under his wing during her formative years. She had always admired him from afar, but felt like an outsider within this opulent world. Sophie was an aspiring artist herself, but struggled with self-doubt and insecurity about her place in the family hierarchy. As she stepped into the mansion for the first time in years, memories flooded back. Of laughter shared during summer visits and quiet moments spent discussing art with Charles over cups of tea. As dusk settled over the estate, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, each character found themselves grappling with their own emotions. Regret, longing, frustration, all intertwined within this lavish setting that held so many memories, yet felt so isolating at times. In this world of wealth and privilege lay unspoken truths waiting to be uncovered, a tapestry woven from ambition and love, but frayed by neglect and misunderstanding. Little did they know that soon they would be forced to confront these truths head-on as they gathered together for what would become an unforgettable turning point in their lives. Certainly, here's a further expanded version of Section 2, titled The Sudden Demise, with a focus on the emotional turmoil and the immediate aftermath of Charles Whitmore's collapse during the charity gala. The charity gala was a spectacle of elegance, with guests adorned in their finest attire, mingling amidst the shimmering chandeliers that hung from the ceiling like clusters of stars. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as laughter and chatter filled the grand ballroom of Charles Whitmore's mansion. Each corner of the room was decorated with exquisite floral arrangements, and the soft glow of candlelight created an inviting ambience. Charles stood at the center of it all, exuding warmth and charm as he engaged with guests who were eager to hear his thoughts on art and philanthropy. Margaret lingered near the edge of the room, her heart heavy as she watched her husband command attention. She felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. Once, she had reveled in this world of glamour alongside him, but now it felt like a gilded cage. As she observed him laughing and gesturing animatedly, memories flooded back, moments when they shared dreams and aspirations, when their love felt unbreakable. Yet those days seemed like distant echoes now, drowned out by years of silence and distance. Ethan stood nearby, his pride mixed with an undercurrent of resentment. He admired his father's ability to connect with people effortlessly, but couldn't shake the feeling that he was always living in Charles's shadow. Why can't he see what I've accomplished? He thought bitterly, recalling his own successes in business that often went unnoticed. The weight of expectation pressed down on him, like a heavy cloak, suffocating and relentless. He longed for a moment where his father would look at him with pride rather than indifference. As the evening unfolded, Lila floated through the crowd like a breath of fresh air, her vibrant dress reflecting her artistic spirit. She moved from one conversation to another, but each time she caught sight of her father, a familiar ache settled in her stomach. Does he even know I'm here? She wondered, feeling invisible amidst the glitz and glamour surrounding them. Lila had always sought her father's approval through her art, yet tonight she felt more like an afterthought than ever. Suddenly, as Charles raised his glass to toast the evening's success, a hush fell over the crowd. His voice trembled slightly as he began to speak about their collective impact on the community, about how their contributions could change lives. But then his words faltered mid-sentence. Confusion swept across his face as he staggered backward. The room seemed to tilt as he collapsed onto the polished marble floor. Panic erupted like wildfire as guests rushed forward, their laughter replaced by gasps of horror. Margaret's heart dropped into her stomach as she pushed through the throng of people, her instincts kicking in. She knelt beside Charles, desperately checking for signs of life, while others frantically called for help. "Charles, please wake up," she cried out, gripping his hand tightly. It felt cold and unresponsive against her warm palm, a stark reminder that everything could change in an instant. Ethan fought through the crowd to reach his father's side, dread pooling in his stomach as he knelt beside Margaret. He felt utterly helpless as paramedics arrived on the scene. Their calm professionalism contrasted sharply with the chaos around them. This can't be happening, he thought desperately as they worked to stabilize Charles. All Ethan wanted was for his father to open his eyes and reassure them that everything would be okay. Lila stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, disbelief etched across her face. The vibrant energy that had filled her moments ago evaporated into thin air as she processed what was happening. Her father was not just a figure of admiration. He was her dad. "No, this can't be real," she whispered to herself as tears streamed down her cheeks. Memories flooded back, of painting together in their sunlit studio and sharing quiet moments over breakfast, and now it all felt so fragile. David Chen pushed through the throng with urgency. Having been near Charles during his speech, he understood immediately what was at stake. His mind raced as he assessed the situation. He needed to take charge amidst the chaos surrounding them. "Everyone back! Give him some space," he shouted to onlookers while kneeling beside Charles and checking for vital signs. As paramedics worked feverishly to revive Charles, Sophie Reynolds stood off to one side, feeling like an intruder in this family crisis despite being welcomed into their lives years ago. She had admired Charles from afar. Now witnessing this moment filled her with dread and sorrow for a man who had inspired her artistic journey. What do I do? What can I do? She thought helplessly as she wrung her hands together. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours before they finally managed to stabilize him enough to transport him to the hospital. As they wheeled Charles away on a stretcher, Margaret clung to his hand until she could hold on no longer. A final act of love that left her feeling utterly lost and shattered inside. The ride to the hospital was surreal for Margaret and Ethan. They sat together in silence, both grappling with fear and uncertainty about what lay ahead without Charles guiding them through life's complexities. Lila followed closely behind them in another car. Her mind raced with thoughts about how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change without warning. At the hospital, time seemed suspended as they waited for news about Charles's condition. Each tick of the clock echoed loudly in their minds, a constant reminder that life could shift at any moment without warning or preparation. When a doctor finally approached them with solemn eyes, Margaret felt a chill run down her spine. "I'm sorry," he said gently but firmly. "We did everything we could." Those words hung heavy in the air like a dark cloud settling over them, a finality that shattered their world into pieces they couldn't comprehend at that moment. In that instant, all their grievances and unspoken words faded away into insignificance against the backdrop of profound loss. They were left standing together in their grief, strangers bound by blood, yet divided by years of misunderstanding and unfulfilled expectations. As they made their way back to Charles's mansion later that night, now an empty shell echoing with memories, they each carried their own burdens, regret for words left unsaid, and fears about what would come next without him guiding them through life's challenges. The mansion loomed before them under a blanket of darkness, a stark contrast to its earlier vibrancy, filled with laughter and life. Now it stood silent and still, holding secrets within its walls that would soon come crashing down upon them all. The following day dawned heavy with grief, the sun casting a muted light over Charles Whitmore's mansion. The once vibrant home now felt like a mausoleum, filled with echoes of laughter that had been silenced too soon. Family and close friends gathered in the grand sitting room, their expressions a mix of sorrow and apprehension as they awaited the reading of the will. The air was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions, each person lost in their own thoughts. Margaret sat on a plush sofa, her fingers nervously twisting a handkerchief in her lap. She had spent the night replaying memories in her mind, moments of joy intertwined with regret. The reality of Charles's absence settled heavily on her heart, and she felt an overwhelming need for closure. Yet, as she looked around at the faces of those gathered, she sensed an undercurrent of anxiety that made her stomach churn. What would Charles have wanted for them? Would he leave them anything at all? Ethan paced near the fireplace, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was determined to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy, but couldn't shake the feeling that he had been overlooked yet again. What if he left everything to someone else? He thought, anger bubbling beneath his surface. The thought of being sidelined in his father's final wishes ignited a fire within him. He needed to know where he stood in Charles's eyes, whether he had ever truly been seen or valued. Lila sat cross-legged on a chair across from Margaret, her sketchbook resting on her lap. She absent-mindedly doodled as she listened to the hushed conversations around her. The lines she drew were jagged and chaotic, mirroring her inner turmoil. She felt torn between grief for her father and frustration at not being acknowledged for who she was, an artist in her own right. What if he didn't think my art mattered? She pondered, biting her lip as tears threatened to spill over. David Chin entered the room with a solemn expression, carrying a briefcase that held more than just legal documents. It contained the weight of years spent alongside Charles as both friend and confidant. He glanced around at the assembled group, noting their anxious faces and tense body language. This is going to be difficult, he thought, knowing that Charles had always kept his cards close to his chest. He took a deep breath and prepared himself for what lay ahead. Sophie Reynolds sat quietly in a corner, feeling like an outsider despite being part of this family gathering. She had always admired Charles from afar, but now found herself grappling with her own emotions. Grief mingled with anxiety about how she would be perceived during this pivotal moment. What if I don't belong here? She wondered as she glanced at Margaret and Lila, both lost in their thoughts. As the clock struck 10, silence enveloped the room when the lawyer entered, a tall man with a serious demeanor who immediately commanded attention. He cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses before addressing the group. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but somber. "I know this is a difficult time for everyone." Margaret felt her heart race as she leaned forward, desperate to hear what would come next. The lawyer continued, outlining Charles's philanthropic endeavors and community contributions before finally reaching the moment they had all been waiting for, the reading of the will itself. He opened the briefcase and pulled out several sheets of paper, glancing down at them with an air of gravity. Charles Whitmore left behind several instructions regarding his estate, he said slowly, allowing each word to sink in before continuing. However, his voice trailed off momentarily as he looked up at them. "What do you mean, however?" Ethan interjected sharply, unable to contain his frustration any longer. The lawyer hesitated before responding, sensing the tension in the room. "The will is blank," he finally stated flatly. A collective gasp filled the room as disbelief washed over everyone present. Margaret's heart sank. She could hardly process what she had just heard. "Blank? What does that mean?" she whispered to herself, feeling a wave of nausea wash over her. Ethan's face flushed with anger as he shot up from his seat. "This can't be right. There has to be something." His voice rose above the stunned silence, echoing against the walls adorned with memories. Lila felt her stomach twist into knots. Confusion clouded her mind as she struggled to comprehend what this meant for their family and their futures. How could he do this? She thought bitterly, anger bubbling beneath her grief. David quickly intervened, trying to calm Ethan down while also processing his own shock at Charles's decision, or lack thereof. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he urged gently but firmly. "There may be reasons behind this." Sophie sat frozen in place, unsure how to react amidst the chaos unfolding around her. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread creeping in. What if this blank will change everything? Would it tear them apart instead of bringing them together? As accusations began to fly, each person pointing fingers at one another, Margaret struggled to maintain control over her emotions. She could feel resentment brewing among them like a storm ready to break loose. Old wounds were being reopened with every word exchanged. Maybe this was some kind of test, Lila suggested tentatively, trying to make sense of it all amidst rising tensions. "A test?" Ethan scoffed incredulously. "What kind of sick joke is this? This isn't just about money. It's about our family." Margaret raised her hand to silence them both. She needed clarity amidst their chaos. "We need to think about what Charles would have wanted," she said softly but firmly. "He cared deeply about community and art. Perhaps we should focus on that instead." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone processed Margaret's words. They were all grappling with their own emotions, but now faced with an unexpected challenge that could either unite or divide them further. As they sat there in stunned silence, each person reflected on their relationships with Charles, the love they shared intertwined with unresolved issues, and wondered how they would navigate this new reality without him guiding them through life's complexities. The atmosphere in the mansion was heavy with tension as the family members gathered in the study, a room filled with leather-bound books and rich mahogany furniture. The air was thick with unspoken words, each person grappling with the shock of the blank will. They had decided to search through Charles's personal belongings, hoping to uncover some clue about his intentions or perhaps a hidden message that could guide them in this uncertain time. Margaret felt a mix of nostalgia and sorrow as she entered the study. This had been Charles's sanctuary, a place where he retreated to think and create. As she stepped inside, she was enveloped by memories of him sitting at his desk, scribbling notes or lost in thought while surrounded by his beloved books. She approached the desk cautiously, her heart racing as she opened a drawer filled with papers, letters, old receipts, and photographs. Each item seemed to whisper stories of their life together. As Margaret sifted through the contents, she stumbled upon a photograph of their wedding day. She paused, tracing the outline of their younger selves, smiling faces filled with hope and love. Tears welled in her eyes as she remembered the promises they had made to each other. What happened to us, she thought, feeling an ache for the connection they had lost over the years. She tucked the photo into her pocket, determined to hold on to that memory amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, Ethan rummaged through a nearby cabinet filled with awards and accolades that Charles had received over the years. Each trophy represented not just success, but also the sacrifices made along the way. As he picked up one particularly large award, a recognition for outstanding community service, he felt a surge of resentment. Why didn't he ever acknowledge my achievements? He muttered under his breath, frustration boiling within him. He wanted to scream out his anger, but knew it would only lead to more conflict. Lila wandered over to a shelf lined with art books and sketches. Her heart raced as she recognized some of her own childhood drawings tucked between Charles's favorite pieces. Did he keep these all these years? She wondered, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. She pulled out a sketch of a whimsical creature she had drawn when she was 8, a time when her father had encouraged her creativity without reservation. Maybe he did believe in me, she thought wistfully, but doubt quickly crept in. Or maybe he just didn't know how to show it. David stood by the window, watching as the sun cast long shadows across the room. He felt a sense of responsibility weighing heavily on his shoulders. He had been Charles's confidant for so long, and now found himself caught in this emotional storm. He picked up a framed photograph of Charles with several community leaders at a charity event, a reminder of all they had accomplished together. Yet beneath that pride lay an unsettling realization. There were secrets Charles had kept even from him. As David turned back toward the group, he noticed Sophie quietly examining a stack of papers on a side table. She looked up as if sensing his gaze and offered a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm trying to find something, anything, that might help us understand," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. David nodded in agreement. They were all searching for answers in their own way. Sophie picked up an envelope marked personal and hesitated before opening it. Inside were letters addressed to various charities, each one expressing Charles's intentions to support causes close to his heart. Art programs for underprivileged children, environmental initiatives, and scholarships for aspiring artists. As she read through them, her heart swelled with admiration for Charles's commitment to making a difference in the world. He truly cared, she thought, feeling inspired yet saddened by how little they knew about his philanthropic endeavors. The group continued to sift through Charles's belongings, each item revealing layers of his life that they hadn't fully appreciated before. They discovered journals filled with thoughts on art and life, pages filled with musings about family dynamics and aspirations for future generations. Margaret found herself drawn to one entry that discussed the importance of nurturing creativity within their children. It was as if Charles had anticipated this moment long before it arrived. "Why didn't he ever share this with us?" Lila asked aloud, frustration creeping into her voice as she flipped through another journal filled with sketches and ideas for community projects that never came to fruition. "Maybe he thought we wouldn't understand," David replied thoughtfully, recalling conversations where Charles expressed doubts about whether his family truly grasped his passion for philanthropy. As they continued searching through drawers and cabinets, Ethan stumbled upon an old scrapbook tucked away in a corner, a compilation of newspaper clippings highlighting Charles's achievements throughout his career. Flipping through its pages brought forth memories both cherished and painful. Each article reminded him of how hard his father had worked, but also how often he had been absent during key moments in Ethan's life. "This is all just stuff," Ethan said bitterly as he tossed the scrapbook aside. "What does any of this matter now?" "It matters because it shows who he was," Margaret interjected firmly but gently. "He poured himself into everything he did, into us." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. She felt a surge of determination rising within her. The group fell silent for a moment as they absorbed her words. Each person reflected on their own relationship with Charles, both its beauty and its flaws, and realized that perhaps understanding him required more than just looking at material possessions. As they continued their search, secrets began to unravel, not just about Charles but also about themselves. Their fears, regrets, and unspoken desires surfacing like bubbles breaking through water's surface. In this moment of shared vulnerability, they began to see glimpses of hope amidst their grief. A chance for connection that transcended their differences, if only they could find common ground in honoring Charles's legacy together. The atmosphere in the study grew increasingly charged as the family members continued to sift through Charles's belongings. The initial shock of discovering the blank had morphed into a simmering frustration, and unspoken grievances began to bubble to the surface. As they gathered around the large oak table, each person felt the weight of their emotions pressing down on them, creating an almost palpable tension in the air. Ethan slammed a drawer shut, his frustration boiling over. "This is ridiculous. How could he leave us nothing? It's like he didn't care at all." His voice echoed through the room, laden with anger and disbelief. The others turned to him, surprised by his outburst. He had always been the one to keep his emotions in check, but now it felt as if a dam had broken within him. Margaret looked at her son, feeling a mix of sympathy and exasperation. "Ethan, this isn't about money. It's about understanding who your father was," she replied, trying to keep her voice calm despite her own rising emotions. "He cared deeply for this family, even if he didn't always show it." "Cared? Is that what you call it?" Ethan shot back, his eyes blazing with frustration. "He was hardly ever around. How can you defend him when he left us with nothing but a blank piece of paper?" The pain in his voice was evident. It was not just about inheritance, but about years of feeling overlooked and undervalued. Lila watched her brother's outburst with a mixture of concern and anger. "You think you're the only one who feels that way?" she interjected, her voice rising as she stepped forward. "I've spent my whole life trying to get his attention, to prove that my art mattered, but all I ever got was silence." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, revealing just how deeply her father's indifference had affected her. David stood between them, sensing that this confrontation could spiral out of control. "Let's take a breath," he urged, trying to mediate the escalating conflict. "We're all hurting right now. We need to focus on what Charles would have wanted for us. Charles wanted us to figure this out ourselves." Ethan retorted sharply, his frustration boiling over. "He wanted us to be strong enough to handle whatever came next without him. But instead, we're left here fighting like children." Margaret felt a surge of emotion at Ethan's words. They struck a chord deep within her. "And what do you think we're doing? Fighting for scraps?" she replied, her voice trembling with hurt. "We're trying to make sense of a life that was filled with love and ambition, but also conflict and distance." Sophie stood off to one side, feeling increasingly uncomfortable as tensions flared around her. She had always admired Charles from a distance, but now found herself caught in the crossfire of family drama that felt foreign to her. "Maybe we should try talking about what we want," she suggested hesitantly, hoping to redirect their focus away from blame. "Talk? Talk about what?" Ethan scoffed, rolling his eyes at Sophie's suggestion. "We're here because we're trying to figure out why he left us nothing. What could we possibly want from him now?" Lila crossed her arms defensively, glancing at Sophie with gratitude for attempting to ease the tension, but feeling frustrated by Ethan's dismissive attitude. "We could start by honoring his memory instead of tearing each other apart," she said quietly but firmly. David nodded in agreement, sensing that Lila was onto something important. "Perhaps we should consider what Charles valued most, his work in the community and his passion for art," he suggested thoughtfully. "Maybe we can come together to continue his legacy rather than fight over what he left behind." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "You think that just because he cared about those things that it excuses leaving us with nothing? We're supposed to just forget how he treated us?" His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. Behind his anger lay deep-seated hurt that had festered for years. Margaret stepped forward, her heart aching for both of her children. "No one is asking you to forget," she said softly but firmly. "But fighting won't bring him back or help us heal." She looked into Ethan's eyes, hoping he would see the truth in her words. As silence fell over the room once more, Lila took a deep breath and spoke up again. What if we each share our memories of Dad? The good ones, the ones that made us love him despite everything else. Her suggestion hung in the air like a fragile thread connecting them all. Ethan hesitated but eventually nodded slowly. There was something comforting about Lila's proposal. A chance to remember their father not just as a figure shrouded in disappointment, but as a man who had shaped their lives in countless ways. Sophie chimed in softly. I'd like that too. I may not have known him as well as you all did, but I have my own memories, moments where he inspired me. She smiled faintly as she recalled times when Charles had encouraged her artistic pursuits during family gatherings. David encouraged everyone with a nod. Perhaps this was their opportunity to bridge the gaps between them, to find common ground amidst their grief. As they began sharing stories, some humorous and others poignant, the tension gradually eased. Laughter mingled with tears as they remembered Charles not just for his successes, but also for his flaws and humanity. In that moment of vulnerability and connection, they began to see glimpses of hope amidst their grief. A chance for reconciliation that transcended their differences, if only they could honor Charles together rather than let anger tear them apart. As the emotional storm of confrontation began to settle, the family members found themselves in a contemplative silence. The weight of their shared grief hung heavily in the air, but beneath it lay a flicker of hope, a desire to honor Charles's memory in a way that would unite them rather than divide them. The study, once filled with tension, now felt like a sacred space where they could explore their feelings and aspirations. Lila was the first to break the silence, her voice soft yet resolute. I think we need to figure out what Dad would have wanted us to do with his legacy, she said, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her sketchbook. He always believed in supporting artists and giving back to the community. What if we created something in his name? Her eyes sparkled with inspiration as she spoke, envisioning a project that could bring people together through art. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, contemplating her suggestion. You mean like a scholarship or an art program? He asked cautiously. Despite his earlier frustrations, he felt a flicker of interest at the idea. That could actually make a difference. The thought of channeling their grief into something constructive resonated with him, even if he still felt conflicted about their father's choices. Yes, exactly, Lila exclaimed, encouraged by Ethan's response. We could establish an art scholarship for young artists who can't afford to pursue their dreams. It would be a way to keep his spirit alive while also helping others. Her passion was evident. She had always wanted to create spaces where creativity could flourish, and this felt like an opportunity to do just that. David nodded thoughtfully, considering the implications of such an initiative. That sounds like a wonderful idea, he said, his voice steady. Charles cared deeply about nurturing talent and fostering creativity in others. This could be a fitting tribute. He glanced at Margaret, hoping she would see the value in Lila's proposal as well. Margaret smiled faintly, feeling a sense of warmth wash over her at the thought of honoring Charles in this way. I think he would have loved that, she replied softly. He often spoke about how important it was to uplift others and invest in the next generation. The memories flooded back. Charles passionately discussing his dreams for the community during quiet evenings at home. Sophie chimed in, her voice filled with enthusiasm. I could help organize art exhibitions or workshops. I've seen how much talent there is out there waiting for an opportunity. She felt invigorated by the idea of creating something meaningful alongside this family she had admired from afar. It was a chance for her to contribute while also solidifying her own place within their lives. Ethan's expression softened as he listened to Sophie's excitement. And we could collaborate with local schools and community centers, he added thoughtfully. It would be great to involve more people, get them excited about art and creativity. The idea of working together on something positive began to shift his perspective on their father's legacy. As they discussed logistics and possibilities, Lila pulled out her sketchbook and began doodling ideas for what the scholarship program might look like. A logo, potential names, and themes that reflected Charles's values. The act of creating something tangible helped ground her amidst the emotional chaos swirling around them. Margaret watched Lila with pride. Seeing her daughter so passionate about honoring Charles reignited feelings of hope within her heart. This is exactly what we need right now, a way to channel our grief into something productive, she said warmly. The conversation flowed naturally as they brainstormed ideas for fundraising events. Art shows featuring local talent, silent auctions of donated pieces, perhaps even gala evenings reminiscent of those Charles had hosted in life. Each suggestion brought them closer together as they envisioned how they could transform their pain into purpose. I want this scholarship to reflect not just my dad's love for art, but also his commitment to community service, Lila emphasized as she sketched more fervently. It should be about giving back and helping others find their voices. Her determination shone through as she spoke. It was clear that this project meant more than just honoring her father. It represented her own journey towards self-acceptance as an artist. David interjected with practical suggestions on how they might structure the scholarship program. Criteria for applicants, potential partnerships with local organizations, and ways to ensure sustainability over time. His experience in business provided valuable insights that helped solidify their vision into something actionable. As they continued discussing details, Ethan found himself increasingly invested in the project. His earlier frustrations began to dissipate as he realized that this initiative could serve as a bridge between him and his family members. It was a chance not only to honor Charles, but also to forge new connections among themselves. Maybe we can even create an annual event, a celebration of art and creativity where we showcase recipients' work, Ethan proposed enthusiastically. It could become something that brings people together every year. Lila nodded enthusiastically, her eyes lighting up at the thought. Yes, that way we can keep Charles's spirit alive while also fostering new talent. The idea sparked excitement among them all. It felt like they were finally moving towards something meaningful instead of being mired in grief. As they wrapped up their brainstorming session, Margaret felt a sense of relief wash over her, a feeling that perhaps they were beginning to heal together through this shared endeavor. They had taken their first steps toward transforming loss into legacy, a legacy that would not only honor Charles, but also strengthen their bonds as a family. In that moment of unity and purpose, each person felt a renewed sense of hope. They were no longer just individuals grappling with grief, but rather collaborators embarking on a journey toward healing through creativity and compassion. With a renewed sense of purpose, the family gathered around the large oak table in the study, a space that had once felt heavy with grief, but now buzzed with excitement and determination. Lila had spread out her sketches and notes, each one a testament to their collective vision for the scholarship program they hoped to establish in Charles's name. The atmosphere was charged with creativity and hope, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the room just days before. Margaret looked around at her children and David, feeling a sense of pride swell within her. "I can't believe how quickly we've come together on this," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "It feels like we're finally honoring Charles in a way that reflects who he truly was." She felt a flicker of optimism as she recalled Charles's passion for art and community service. This initiative would embody his spirit. Ethan leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed Lila's sketches. "I think we should name it something that captures both his love for art and his commitment to helping others," he suggested. "What about the Charles Whitmore Art and Community Scholarship? It has a nice ring to it." His suggestion hung in the air, and everyone nodded in agreement. "I love that," Lila replied enthusiastically. "It really encapsulates what we're trying to achieve." She felt invigorated by the prospect of creating something meaningful, something that could change lives just as her father had aimed to do during his lifetime. David pulled out a notepad and began jotting down key points as they discussed the scholarship structure. "We should consider criteria for applicants. Maybe focus on young artists from underprivileged backgrounds who show promise but lack resources," he proposed thoughtfully. His experience in business allowed him to see the practical side of their vision, ensuring it would have a lasting impact. Margaret chimed in, "And we can also include mentorship opportunities. Pairing recipients with established artists could provide invaluable guidance." She envisioned how these connections could inspire young talents and foster a sense of community among artists. As they brainstormed, Lila's sketches began to take shape into a cohesive plan. She drew inspiration from her father's favorite colors, vibrant blues and warm earth tones, and incorporated elements that symbolize growth and creativity. What if we designed an emblem for the scholarship? Something that represents both art and community, she suggested excitedly. Ethan nodded, intrigued by the idea. That could be powerful, a visual representation of what we stand for. He felt a surge of pride, knowing they were creating something that would carry their father's legacy forward, while also allowing them to express their individuality. As discussions continued, they tackled practical details, such as fundraising strategies. David suggested organizing an annual gala dedicated to showcasing the work of scholarship recipients alongside established artists. We could invite local businesses to sponsor the event. It would not only raise funds but also create connections within the community, he explained. Sophie chimed in with enthusiasm. And I can help coordinate art exhibitions leading up to the gala. We could feature local talent and give them a platform while promoting our scholarship. Her excitement was palpable as she envisioned how this initiative could bring people together through art. The conversation flowed naturally as they built upon each other's ideas. Ethan proposed creating an online platform where applicants could submit their portfolios and share their stories, a way for them to connect with us and show us who they are beyond just their artwork, he emphasized. Margaret felt tears prick at her eyes as she listened to her children collaborate so seamlessly. This was not just about honoring Charles. It was about healing old wounds and forging new connections among themselves. She realized how important this project had become, not only as a tribute, but also as a means of strengthening their family bonds. As they finalized details for the scholarship program, Lila suggested incorporating community service into the requirements. Recipients should engage in outreach programs or volunteer opportunities related to art, she proposed passionately. This way, they can give back just as Dad did. Ethan agreed wholeheartedly, recognizing how this would align with Charles's values. It makes sense. Art is meant to be shared and experienced by everyone, he said thoughtfully. This will create a ripple effect in our community. With each passing moment, they felt more united in their mission. They were no longer just grieving individuals, but collaborators working toward a common goal, a chance to create something beautiful from their loss. Once they had established a clear framework for the scholarship program, David suggested it was time to draft an official document outlining their intentions. We need something tangible that reflects our commitment, he said firmly. Let's put our ideas into writing so we can present it formally. Margaret nodded in agreement, feeling invigorated by their progress. I'll reach out to our lawyer to help us draft this up properly, she said decisively. We need to ensure everything is set up correctly so that this scholarship can thrive. As they prepared to leave the study, Lila looked around at her family with newfound appreciation. I never thought we'd come together like this, she admitted quietly. It feels good to be working towards something positive. Her heart swelled with hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of healing for all of them. Ethan smiled softly at his sister, realizing how much he had underestimated her vision all along. Perhaps this journey would allow him to understand not just his father better, but also himself and his place within this family. As they exited the study together, there was an unmistakable shift in their dynamic. A sense of unity forged through shared purpose and love for Charles Whitmore that would guide them forward into uncharted territory. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the Whitmore mansion as the family gathered in the garden, a place that had once been filled with laughter and joy. Now it served as a backdrop for reflection and renewal. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had lingered in their hearts since Charles's passing. As they settled onto the patio furniture, a sense of calm enveloped them, inviting open conversation. Margaret took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze brush against her skin. I can't believe how far we've come in such a short time, she began, her voice soft but steady. Creating the scholarship feels like a way to honor Charles while also allowing us to heal together. Her gaze drifted toward the vibrant blooms surrounding them. each petal a reminder of life's beauty, even amidst sorrow. Ethan nodded, his expression contemplative. It's strange how something so painful can lead to something so positive, he admitted. I never expected to feel this connected to you all again. He glanced at Lila, who sat beside him, sketching in her notebook. The sight of her creativity flowing freely filled him with admiration. He realized how much he had taken for granted. Lila looked up from her drawings, her eyes bright with inspiration. I think Dad would be proud of us, she said earnestly. He always wanted us to support each other and pursue our passions. Her heart swelled with hope as she envisioned the impact their scholarship could have on aspiring artists. Young people who might find their voices through creativity just as she had. David leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the changes he had witnessed within the family dynamic. You know, he said thoughtfully, Charles often spoke about legacy, not just in terms of wealth, but in relationships and community impact. I think we're finally embodying that. His words resonated deeply. They were not merely preserving Charles's memory, but actively shaping it into something meaningful. Sophie, who had been quietly absorbing the conversation, felt compelled to share her thoughts. I've always admired how passionate Charles was about art and community, she said softly. Being part of this family has shown me that creativity is not just an individual pursuit. It can bring people together. She felt grateful for the opportunity to contribute to something greater than herself, a chance to be part of a legacy that honored Charles's spirit. As they exchanged stories about their favorite memories of Charles, laughter began to replace some of the sorrow that had weighed heavily on them. Ethan recounted a time when Charles had attempted to cook dinner for the family, but ended up burning everything. He was so proud of his culinary skills until we all sat down to eat charred pasta. The memory brought smiles and chuckles, reminding them of their father's humanity and imperfections. Margaret joined in with her own recollection of Charles's love for spontaneous adventures, like the time he had taken them on an unplanned road trip to the coast. We didn't even pack properly. We ended up buying beach towels at a gas station, she laughed. The warmth of those memories wrapped around them like a comforting blanket, easing some of the pain they had carried. Lila shared stories about her father's encouragement during her artistic endeavors, the way he would sit with her for hours while she painted, offering gentle critiques that helped her grow. He believed in my talent even when I didn't, she said softly, feeling tears prick at her eyes. I want to honor that belief through our scholarship. Ethan reached over and squeezed Lila's hand reassuringly. We'll make sure his legacy lives on through every recipient, he promised. The bond between them felt stronger than it had in years, a shared commitment to honoring their father while also supporting one another. As dusk began to settle over the garden, Margaret felt a sense of closure wash over her, a realization that while grief was still present, it no longer defined their relationship with one another or with Charles's memory. Instead, they were building something new together, something that would carry forward his spirit into future generations. Let's make this scholarship not just about art, but also about connection, Margaret suggested passionately. We could create events where recipients can showcase their work alongside established artists, an opportunity for mentorship and collaboration. Her idea sparked excitement among them. They could create a vibrant community rooted in creativity and support. David nodded enthusiastically. That could be incredible. It would not only uplift young artists, but also honor Charles's vision for bringing people together. He felt invigorated by the prospect of creating lasting change within their community alongside this family he had come to care for deeply. As they continued discussing plans for the scholarship program and upcoming events, laughter mingled with heartfelt conversations, a beautiful symphony of healing unfolding before them. They were no longer just grieving individuals, but rather collaborators embarking on a journey toward renewal and connection. In that moment, under the fading light of day, each person felt a renewed sense of hope, a belief that they could honor Charles Whitmore's legacy while also forging deeper connections among themselves. They were ready to embrace new beginnings together as a family bound not only by blood, but by shared dreams and aspirations. As night fell and stars began to twinkle overhead, Margaret looked around at her children and David with gratitude swelling in her heart. They were embarking on an adventure filled with purpose, a chance to transform their loss into something beautiful that would resonate far beyond their own lives. As the weeks turned into months, the Whitmore family poured their hearts into establishing the Charles Whitmore Art and Community Scholarship. The initial excitement had transformed into a dedicated mission, and they found themselves working tirelessly to bring their vision to life. Each member contributed their unique skills, creating a sense of unity that had been lacking for years. Margaret took charge of the administrative side, reaching out to local schools and community organizations to spread the word about the scholarship. She crafted heartfelt letters detailing Charles's passion for art and his commitment to supporting young talent. With each interaction, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This project was not just about honoring her husband, but also about fostering connections within the community he loved so dearly. Ethan embraced his role as a liaison with local businesses, seeking sponsorships and partnerships to fund the scholarship. He organized meetings with potential donors, sharing his father's story and emphasizing how their contributions could make a lasting impact on aspiring artists. "This isn't just about money," he would tell them earnestly. "It's about giving young people the opportunity to pursue their dreams, just like my father did for me." His passion resonated with many, and soon they began to see tangible support pouring in. Lila channeled her creativity into designing promotional materials for the scholarship program. She created vibrant posters and flyers that captured the essence of what they were trying to achieve, artistry intertwined with community spirit. Her designs featured images of diverse young artists at work, showcasing the beauty of creativity in all its forms. Each piece she created felt like a tribute to her father's belief in the power of art to inspire change. David played a crucial role in organizing fundraising events, leveraging his business acumen to ensure their efforts were both effective and sustainable. He proposed hosting an annual art gala as a centerpiece for their initiative, a night dedicated to celebrating local talent while raising funds for the scholarship. The idea sparked enthusiasm among the family. It would be an opportunity not only to honor Charles, but also to create a platform for emerging artists. As preparations for the gala began, excitement filled the air. They reached out to local artists, inviting them to showcase their work at the event. The response was overwhelming. Artists from various backgrounds expressed eagerness to participate, seeing this as an opportunity not only to gain exposure, but also to connect with others who shared their passion. Sophie took charge of coordinating the exhibition aspect of the gala. She worked closely with local galleries and art collectives, curating a diverse selection of pieces that reflected both established and emerging talent. "This is our chance to create a vibrant space where creativity can thrive," she said enthusiastically during planning meetings. Her vision was clear. They would transform the gala into a celebration of community and artistry. As the date of the gala approached, anticipation built within the family. They spent countless hours preparing. Lila hung her artwork around their home as inspiration. Margaret organized logistics. Ethan secured last-minute sponsorships. David coordinated volunteers. Sophie finalized details with participating artists. Each task brought them closer together as they united under a common goal. On the night of the gala, the mansion was transformed into a breathtaking venue filled with twinkling lights and vibrant artwork adorning every wall. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as guests arrived, mingling amidst laughter and conversation. For Margaret, seeing friends and community members gather in honor of Charles felt surreal, a testament to his lasting impact on those around him. As guests strolled through the exhibition space, they marveled at the diverse array of artwork displayed. Paintings, sculptures, photographs, all telling stories that resonated deeply within each viewer's heart. Lila stood proudly beside her pieces, engaging with attendees who admired her work while sharing anecdotes about her father's encouragement throughout her artistic journey. Ethan moved through the crowd with newfound confidence, sharing stories about Charles's legacy and how this scholarship aimed to uplift young artists in their community. He felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him as he witnessed firsthand how their efforts were coming together, a realization that perhaps he had finally begun to carve out his own identity separate from his father's shadow. As David took to the stage to welcome everyone, He spoke eloquently about Charles's unwavering commitment to art and community service. Tonight is not just about celebrating talent. It's about honoring a man who believed in each one of us, he said passionately. Let us carry forward his legacy by investing in those who will shape our future. The room erupted in applause as David concluded his speech, but it was Margaret who felt tears welling up in her eyes, a blend of pride and sorrow washing over her as she reflected on how far they had come since Charles's passing. This night was not just an event. It was a celebration of life, a reminder that love could transcend even death. As guests mingled throughout the evening, connections blossomed. Artists exchanged contact information while discussing potential collaborations. Community members expressed interest in supporting future initiatives. Young aspiring artists shared their dreams with established mentors who offered guidance and encouragement. By night's end, they had raised significant funds for the scholarship program, a tangible result that filled them all with hope for what lay ahead. As they gathered together after the event, laughter echoed through the mansion once more, a sound that had been absent for far too long. In that moment under starlit skies filled with promise, Margaret looked around at her children and David, a family united not only by blood, but by shared dreams and aspirations rooted in love for Charles Whitmore. They had transformed their grief into something beautiful, a legacy that would continue long after this night faded into memory. In the weeks following the gala, the Whitmore family found themselves riding a wave of momentum and inspiration. The success of the event had not only raised substantial funds for the scholarship, but had also ignited a renewed sense of purpose within each member. They were no longer just a family grappling with loss. They had become a collective force dedicated to making a difference in their community. Margaret felt invigorated as she dove into her role as the scholarship coordinator. Each day brought new opportunities to connect with local schools and organizations, spreading the word about the program they had created in Charles's name. She organized informational sessions where students could learn about applying for the scholarship, sharing stories about Charles's passion for art and his belief in nurturing young talent. The excitement in the room was palpable as students listened, their eyes lighting up at the prospect of pursuing their dreams. Ethan took on a more active role in promoting the scholarship within local businesses. He reached out to potential sponsors, sharing success stories from the gala and emphasizing how their contributions could help shape the future of aspiring artists. This is an investment in our community, he would say confidently during meetings. By supporting this scholarship, you're not just helping one individual. You're fostering a culture of creativity that will benefit everyone. His enthusiasm resonated with many business owners, leading to partnerships that would ensure the program's sustainability. Lila immersed herself in developing workshops for scholarship recipients, envisioning a series of creative sessions where young artists could hone their skills while also learning about the business side of art. It's not enough to just create. They need to know how to navigate this world, she explained during planning meetings with David and Sophie. We can invite established artists to mentor them and share their experiences. The idea excited her. It felt like a way to carry forward her father's legacy while also empowering others. David, ever the pragmatist, focused on ensuring that everything was structured properly for the scholarship program. He worked diligently with Margaret to set up clear guidelines for applicants and establish a fair selection process. We want this to be transparent and accessible, he emphasized during discussions. It's essential that we honor Charles's values by making sure every deserving artist has a chance. His commitment to integrity inspired confidence among those involved in the program. Sophie found herself increasingly drawn into the community through her involvement with the scholarship initiative. She began organizing art exhibitions featuring local talent, creating spaces where emerging artists could showcase their work alongside established names. This is about building connections, she said passionately at one meeting. Art has this incredible power to bring people together, and we need to harness that. Her efforts helped foster collaboration among artists who had previously felt isolated from one another. As they moved forward, the Whitmore family also took time to reflect on their own relationships, how they had changed since Charles's passing, and how they could continue to support one another in their individual journeys. They began scheduling regular family dinners, creating a space where they could share updates on their lives while also celebrating each other's successes. During one such dinner, Lila shared exciting news about an upcoming exhibition showcasing her work alongside other scholarship recipients. "I can't believe it! This is my first solo show," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. Ethan beamed with pride as he raised his glass in celebration. "To Lila, your talent deserves to be recognized." The warmth in his voice filled Lila with gratitude. It felt good to have her brother's support. Margaret listened intently as Ethan shared updates about new partnerships he was forming with local businesses. She felt a swell of pride at how far her children had come since that fateful day when Charles passed away. They were no longer just navigating grief. They were actively shaping their futures while honoring their father's memory. As they enjoyed dessert together, homemade pie reminiscent of family gatherings past, David spoke up about his own journey since joining the Whitmore family circle. "You know, I've always admired Charles from afar," he admitted thoughtfully. "But working on this scholarship has given me a deeper understanding of what he truly valued." His words resonated with everyone present. It was clear that Charles's legacy was impacting not just them, but also those around them. In moments like these, Margaret felt hope blossoming within her heart. A realization that while grief would always be part of their story, it didn't have to define them. They were forging new paths together, united by love and shared aspirations. As spring turned into summer, the scholarship program began receiving applications from young artists eager for support. Each submission told a unique story, dreams woven together through creativity and resilience. And Margaret took great care in reviewing each one alongside David and Lila. They were determined to select recipients who embodied not only artistic talent, but also a commitment to giving back to their communities. The first round of recipients was announced at an intimate gathering held at the mansion, a celebration filled with laughter and creativity as families came together to honor these emerging talents. Margaret stood before everyone, her heart swelling with pride as she spoke about Charles's vision for nurturing creativity within their community. "We are here today not just to celebrate these talented individuals, but also to carry forward my husband's legacy," she said earnestly, her voice steady yet emotional. "Charles believed in each one of you, the power of art to inspire change, and we are committed to supporting you on your journeys." As applause filled the room, Lila caught Ethan's eye across the gathering. They exchanged smiles filled with understanding. This was just the beginning of something beautiful. In that moment, surrounded by aspiring artists and supportive families, Margaret realized that they had transformed loss into legacy, a legacy rooted in love and creativity that would continue to flourish long after this day faded into memory. As summer transitioned into autumn, the Whitmore family found themselves immersed in a rhythm of activity centered around the scholarship program. The first cohort of recipients had begun their workshops, and the excitement in the air was palpable. Each week brought new opportunities for connection and creativity, and the mansion became a hub of artistic expression. One crisp afternoon, Margaret gathered her children and David in the living room, where sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the space with a warm glow. "I think it's time we reflect on what we've accomplished so far," she suggested, her voice filled with anticipation. "This journey has been transformative for all of us." Ethan nodded in agreement, leaning back in his chair as he considered her words. "It's incredible to see how much talent is out there," he remarked. "I never expected to feel so inspired by these young artists. They remind me of why we started this in the first place." His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as he recalled the energy and passion that filled each workshop. Lila chimed in, her heart swelling with pride. "I've had the chance to mentor some of them directly, and it's been amazing to watch their confidence grow," she said. One student even told me that she felt like she could finally express herself without fear. The thought brought tears to her eyes. She realized that through their efforts, they were not just honoring their father, but also empowering others to find their voices. David leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "It's important to remember that this program is about more than just art. It's about building community," he said earnestly. We're creating a network of support that extends beyond our own family. He reflected on how their initiative had fostered connections among local artists, businesses, and aspiring creators, an ecosystem of creativity that was beginning to flourish. Margaret smiled at David's insight, feeling a sense of gratitude for his unwavering support throughout this journey. "You're right," she agreed. "Charles always believed that art could bring people together and inspire change. I think we're finally realizing that vision." She felt a warmth spread through her chest as she thought about how far they had come since his passing. As they continued their discussion, memories began to surface, moments from their past that had shaped who they were today. Lila recalled a time when Charles had taken her to an art exhibit as a child, encouraging her to explore different mediums and styles. "He always made me feel like my creativity mattered," she said softly. "I want to give that same feeling to these young artists." Her determination shone brightly. She was committed to ensuring that others experienced the same encouragement she had received. Ethan shared his own memory of a family road trip where Charles had impulsively stopped at a roadside art fair. "He bought me my first sketchbook there," he reminisced with a smile. "I remember feeling so proud when he told me I had talent." The memory stirred something deep within him, a realization that his father had always seen potential in him, even when he hadn't recognized it himself. Margaret listened intently as her children shared stories, feeling a sense of connection growing among them. They were no longer just individuals navigating grief. They were a family united by shared experiences and aspirations for the future. As dusk settled outside, casting long shadows across the room, David suggested they consider how they could further expand the scholarship program in the coming years. "What if we included opportunities for recipients to showcase their work at community events?" he proposed. "It would give them exposure while also fostering connections with local businesses and patrons." Lila's eyes lit up at the idea. "Yes, we could organize an annual art fair where recipients can display their work alongside established artists," she exclaimed. "It would be a celebration of creativity and community." The thought excited her. It felt like another way to honor Charles while also empowering others. Ethan chimed in with enthusiasm, already envisioning how they could promote such an event. "We could partner with local schools and organizations to get more people involved, create workshops leading up to it where artists can collaborate." His excitement was infectious. Margaret felt invigorated by their shared vision. As they brainstormed ideas for expanding the scholarship program and fostering community engagement, Margaret felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her, a realization that they were not just preserving Charles's legacy, but actively shaping it into something vibrant and meaningful. Later that evening, as they wrapped up their discussions and prepared for bed, Margaret took a moment to reflect on everything they had accomplished together. The laughter shared during brainstorming sessions, the pride felt at each recipient's success, and the connections forged within their community. In those quiet moments before sleep enveloped her, she understood that while grief would always be part of their story, it no longer defined them. Instead, they were creating new narratives rooted in love and creativity, stories that would resonate far beyond their own lives. As autumn leaves began to fall outside, Margaret looked forward to what lay ahead. The promise of new beginnings intertwined with cherished memories of Charles Whitmore, a legacy not just measured by wealth, but by love, connection, and the power of art to inspire change. As winter settled in and the holiday season approached, the Whitmore family found themselves reflecting on a year filled with profound change and growth. The mansion, once echoing with silence after Charles's passing, now buzzed with life and warmth. Each room was adorned with decorations that celebrated both their family traditions and the new legacy they were building in Charles's name. Margaret stood in the living room, arranging ornaments on the tree, a task that had always brought her joy. This year, however, felt different. Each ornament was not just a decoration, but a symbol of resilience, a reminder of how far they had come since that fateful day when they received the news of Charles's death. She paused to admire a handmade ornament crafted by Lila during her childhood, its colors faded, but still vibrant with memories. "This year feels like a fresh start," she thought, feeling a sense of hope blossoming within her heart. Ethan entered the room, carrying a box filled with lights. He glanced around at the festive decorations and smiled. "It looks amazing in here," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "I can't believe how much we've accomplished this year." He felt proud, not only of their work on the scholarship program, but also of how they had come together as a family to support one another through grief. Lila joined them, her arms full of colorful garlands. "I've been thinking about how we can incorporate more art into our holiday traditions this year," she suggested excitedly. "What if we invited some of our scholarship recipients to join us for a festive art night? They could help us create decorations and share their own artistic traditions." The idea sparked enthusiasm in her. It felt like a way to further connect with those they were supporting while celebrating creativity. As they decorated together, laughter filled the air, intertwining with the scent of pine and cinnamon wafting from the kitchen where Margaret prepared her famous holiday treats. The warmth of familial love enveloped them as they shared stories about their favorite memories of Charles, his laughter echoing through their recollections like a comforting presence. Later that evening, they gathered around the dining table adorned with candles and festive dishes. Margaret looked around at her children and David, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for how far they had come. "This year has been transformative," she began, her voice steady yet emotional. "We've not only honored Charles's memory, but also created something beautiful through our scholarship program." Ethan nodded in agreement. "It's incredible to see how many young artists have benefited from what we started," he said thoughtfully. "I never expected to feel so inspired by them." He reflected on how their initiative had fostered connections within the community, how it had allowed him to step out from his father's shadow and carve his own path. Lila chimed in, her eyes shining with excitement. "I've loved mentoring some of our recipients. Seeing their confidence grow has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life," she shared passionately. It was clear that through this journey, she had found not only her voice as an artist, but also her purpose in nurturing others. David leaned back in his chair, contemplating their journey together. "We've built more than just a scholarship. We've created a community," he said earnestly. "Charles always believed in the power of art to bring people together, and I think we're finally realizing that vision." His words resonated deeply. It was evident that this initiative had transformed not only their lives but also those around them. As dessert was served, Margaret's special holiday pie, the conversation flowed easily among them. They discussed plans for future events and workshops, brainstorming ways to expand the scholarship program even further. Ideas bounced back and forth like fireworks illuminating the night sky, each suggestion igniting excitement and hope for what lay ahead. After dinner, they gathered around the fireplace, where flickering flames cast warm shadows across their faces. Margaret felt compelled to share her thoughts one last time before they concluded their evening together. "Before we wrap up tonight," she began softly, "I want us to take a moment to acknowledge everything we've accomplished this year." She looked at each of them in turn. Ethan, Lila, David, feeling grateful for their shared commitment to honoring Charles's legacy. "I know this hasn't been easy," she continued, her voice steady but emotional. "But I believe we've created something beautiful together, a scholarship program that embodies not just Charles's love for art, but also our love for one another." Tears glistened in her eyes as she spoke. It was a moment of profound connection that transcended grief. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "This year has taught me so much about what it means to be part of a family," he said quietly. "I've learned that supporting each other is just as important as pursuing our own dreams." He felt a sense of solidarity growing among them, a realization that they were stronger together than apart. Lila added her voice to the conversation, feeling empowered by her experiences mentoring young artists. "I want to continue building bridges between generations," she said earnestly. "Art has this incredible ability to connect people. It's something I want to nurture in others." Her determination resonated deeply within each member of the family. They understood that this was not just about preserving Charles's memory, but also about creating new pathways for future generations. As they shared their thoughts and aspirations, Margaret felt an overwhelming sense of hope wash over her, a belief that while loss would always be part of their story, it didn't have to define them. They were forging new narratives rooted in love and creativity, stories that would resonate far beyond their own lives. Later that evening, as they gathered around the table for dinner, a feast filled with laughter and cherished recipes, Margaret looked around at her children and David with gratitude swelling in her heart. They had transformed grief into legacy, a legacy that would continue to inspire others long after this night faded into memory. As they raised their glasses in celebration, Margaret made a silent promise to Charles that they would carry forward his spirit through every artistic endeavor and every life they touched along the way. In doing so, they were not only honoring his memory, but also embracing new beginnings filled with love, creativity, and connection.